Let the darkness of the room fold around you. Let the sound of ancient winds and forgotten gods cradle your thoughts. Breathe in, and let us begin our tale. In the twilight realm between myth and memory, before the first leaf fell and before the stars were sung into the sky, there stood a great tree. Yggdrasil, the world tree. Its roots plunged deep into the hidden wells of wisdom, and its branches held the 9 realms aloft in delicate balance. Beneath its boughs, all things began, and all things would end. This is the story of Odin, the Allfather, ruler of Asgard, wanderer of the worlds, seeker of knowledge, even at terrible cost. But before he was the Allfather, before he bore the weight of the cosmos upon his shoulders, he was a traveler with questions that burned brighter than any sword. And so, let us step into the misty veil of the past, into the quiet before the storm, and follow the first footsteps of a god on a journey to become more than divine. The wind rustles softly. The story begins. Long before Odin carved runes into the bark of time, he walked among his kin, the Aesir, in the shining halls of Asgard. Golden towers rose into a pale sky, their tips touching the clouds, and meadows stretched green and endless in the distance. But even in this realm of splendor, Odin's gaze wandered. He did not laugh as loudly as his brothers Vili and Ve. He did not feast as freely as Thor. For deep in his soul there was a silence he could not explain, a question unnamed but ever present. What lay beyond the wisdom of gods? What truths did the Norns whisper in secret when no one watched? The Aesir lived in comfort, strong and proud. But Odin saw the cracks forming at the edges of things. Shadows moving too quickly, the world changing in ways even gods could not predict. He turned his eyes to Yggdrasil, the tree that held all the realms in its vast branches. It whispered to him in dreams, of ancient things, of futures unwritten, of sacrifice and sight. He knew he had to act, to understand the threads of fate that bound gods and mortals alike. And so Odin left his throne. He donned the garments of a wanderer, gray cloak, wide-brimmed hat, and a staff carved with signs no one else could read. He walked away from the golden halls of Asgard without ceremony. The ravens Hugin and Munin flew close at his side, silent but watchful. Memory and thought bound to him as breath is bound to life. His first steps led him to Mimir's well. Hidden beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots, this ancient spring shimmered in perpetual twilight. Mimir, the guardian of wisdom, sat beside it, a being as old as the stars whose eyes glowed with secrets. Odin approached, bowing his head.
I seek knowledge,
he said. Mimir studied him for a long while.
Knowledge is not given freely.
The old one whispered.
It is bought. What will you offer?
Odin, without hesitation, plucked out his right eye. A sharp breath, a moment of pain, then silence. He placed the eye into the well, and the waters swallowed it. Mimir nodded once.
Then see.
And in that moment, Odin saw the endless web of fate, the great tapestry woven by the Norns. He saw the rise and fall of realms. He saw Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. He saw betrayal, sacrifice, and renewal. But the knowledge was incomplete. He had peered into the roots of the world. Now he needed to understand the runes that shaped its branches. So Odin traveled further, alone now, his eye covered by a dark cloth. The wind guided him. The whispers of Yggdrasil hummed like a song only he could hear. At the center of the tree, where no realm dared tread, hung a great branch over a deep abyss. The void called Ginnungagap, the yawning chasm from which all things were born. Here Odin made a solemn choice. He hung himself from Yggdrasil. No food, no drink, no movement. For 9 days and 9 nights he dangled between life and death, the rope biting into his flesh, the cold wind howling around him. The pain was unending, the darkness absolute, but in the silence he listened. He heard the song of the runes, ancient letters of power hidden in the bones of the world. They whispered their secrets in riddles and echoes. Odin reached for them, and in doing so, changed forever. On the 9th night he fell, but he did not fall into death. He landed in knowing. The runes were his. He had died, and he had risen anew, no longer just a god, but a bearer of wisdom, a master of fate. When Odin rose from the earth, Yggdrasil shivered. The skies above Asgard brightened, and the roots of the world tree pulsed with light. The god returned to his people, but he was changed. His gaze held the weight of aeons. His voice carried the echo of prophecy. He had seen the end, and still he walked forward. And so, Odin the Wanderer became Odin the Allfather, king of Asgard, keeper of secrets, guardian of the balance between order and chaos. Yet even after all this, he did not stop seeking, because true wisdom is not a destination, it is a journey. And his had only just begun. Breathe slowly. Let your thoughts drift like leaves across the stream of time. Odin the Allfather will soon carry you deeper into realms beyond light and shadow, where gods walk hidden paths and fate speaks in riddles. After his travels through the farthest edges of Midgard, where frost clings to old stones and time itself moves slowly, Odin turned his gaze inward. He had walked among mortals and giants, among beasts and the silent groves of forgotten gods. But wisdom, true searing wisdom, still eluded him. And so he came at last to the base of Yggdrasil, the great world tree. Its roots stretched into realms unseen, drinking from wells of time, memory, and destiny. Its trunk rose like a pillar between the worlds, holding the weight of all that was and all that would ever be. The tree did not speak in words, yet Odin heard it clearly. It told him,
If you seek true knowledge, you must offer that which is most precious.
And Odin, ever resolute, did not flinch. With a calm breath and no cry of pain, he pierced himself with his own spear, Gungnir. He hung himself upon the branches of the world tree, not for minutes or hours, but for 9 long nights, suspended between life and death. The winds tore at him. Ravens circled in the distance. The stars wheeled overhead, and still he did not move. No food, no drink, no company, only silence. Only the still cold presence of Yggdrasil beneath him. The roots of the tree whispered. They whispered of fate. They whispered of runes, ancient markings etched into the bones of the world. They showed him glimpses of victory, of betrayal, of Ragnarok yet to come. And on the 9th night, when the moon hung pale as bone and even time seemed to hold its breath, Odin saw the runes. Not with his eyes, but with the fire of understanding behind them. He reached and seized them. Their power surged into him, knowledge so deep, so strange that his very being trembled. The bindings broke. Odin fell to the ground beneath the tree, reborn, not as a seeker of knowledge, but as its bearer. He rose slowly, breath shallow, eyes burning with quiet fire. Now he knew the language of the cosmos, the secrets of fate, the ways of gods and men. He carved the runes into stone, wood, and memory. He gave them to the worthy, to those brave enough to face themselves, and in doing so he shaped the very fabric of Norse magic. But the journey did not end with the runes. Odin now knew that knowledge, once gained, demands to be acted upon. He traveled next to Mimir's well, hidden deep within the roots of Yggdrasil. It was said the waters of the well held memory itself, the distilled essence of time and knowing. And it was guarded by Mimir, a being older than any god whose mind pulsed with ancient thought. Odin approached with reverence.
I seek a drink,
He said.
from the well of memory.
Mimir looked upon him, not with scorn, but with solemn gravity.
There is a price.
He said. Odin nodded,
I will pay it.
and without hesitation he plucked out his own eye, the eye that had once gazed upon the 9 realms, that had watched stars fall and empires rise. He dropped it into the well. The water rippled, and in return Mimir offered the cup. Odin drank. Visions exploded behind his mind's eye. He saw Ymir's bones forming the mountains, the oceans from his blood. He saw Loki's children fated to rise in a distant twilight. He saw the long march toward Ragnarok and the glimmer of hope that lay beyond it. He did not flinch. He did not look away. Thus did Odin become the Allfather, not by blood or strength, but by sacrifice. He gave of himself again and again, not to gain power, but to gain clarity, to see, to know, to guide. And now he walked the paths of the world with one eye turned inward and the other fixed on the distant threads of fate. He whispered the runes to those who would listen. He stood in council with gods. He sat beneath Yggdrasil, ever watching. And when the wind grows still, when the trees sway in the twilight, you might hear him. A soft murmur, a low chant. The sound of wisdom passed like breath through the leaves. A hush had fallen across the 9 realms, far above the shimmering branches of Yggdrasil, where starlight danced on the air like drifting snow. Odin stood still, quiet as the wind between worlds. The gods of Asgard had retreated to their halls. Midgard lay veiled in twilight slumber, and the Allfather, the Wanderer, now prepared for the price no god had dared pay. He had learned much. He had touched the edge of wisdom, stolen glimpses of what lay beyond time, but he had not yet found the runes, the secret language of fate. They were older than the gods, older even than Yggdrasil itself, woven into the roots of creation. To read them was to wield the power to shape reality. But the runes did not reveal themselves easily. They demanded sacrifice. And so Odin approached the world tree not as king, not as warrior, but as seeker. He gazed up into the branches of Yggdrasil, the great ash tree whose roots burrowed into the well of Uruk and whose limbs stretched across the heavens. The leaves whispered secrets in ancient tongues. The bark shimmered with lifeblood from countless ages. This tree had seen all: the birth of gods, the rise of mortals, and the coming end. It would now bear witness to Odin's greatest offering. He tied the noose himself. A cord of sacred sinew taken from the binding of Fenrir, strong, unbreakable, woven with the breath of giants and gods alike. Around the highest branch it went, and around his neck. He offered no prayer, no plea, no farewell, for this was not a death of despair. It was a death of intent. With a final breath, he stepped from the branch and let the world fall away. For 9 nights, Odin hung there, pierced by his own spear, Gungnir, whose tip bit into his side like the truth he sought. No food passed his lips, no drink touched his tongue. The stars wheeled overhead. The Norns passed below, weaving their threads in silence. The ravens did not come, even thought abandoned him. There was only the sway of the rope, the creak of the tree, and the cold, infinite quiet of sacrifice. But on the 9th night, when his body had grown light and his spirit heavy, the tree answered. The bark beneath him glowed faintly, a pulse like breath, a glimmer like dew catching moonlight. And then the runes emerged, not written but revealed. They swam through the air, alive, their meanings unfolding like petals before his fading eyes. They spoke of beginnings and endings, of names that could unmake fire, of bonds that could bind even destiny. He saw them, understood them, became them. And in that moment he fell, not to death but to knowing. He landed at the roots of Yggdrasil, breathless, bloody, broken, but more whole than ever before. In his palm the runes shimmered, etched not in ink but in soul. His eye, once keen and fierce, now held something deeper, a reflection of all he had glimpsed. He had sacrificed the self to gain the cosmos. When he returned to Asgard, silence fell upon the golden halls. Frigg, his beloved, saw the change in him before he spoke a word. His children, Thor and Balder, felt the weight of his gaze and the calm of his presence. Even the walls of Valhalla seemed to lean closer, listening. Odin had brought something back with him, a language of power, of peace, of prophecy. He carved the runes into stone. He taught them to those who would listen, the skalds, the wise women, the wandering seers. Not all could hold them. Many went mad. But a few, a precious few, heard the rhythm in the silence, saw the symbols in the wind. And through them the world began to whisper in runes. He named the strongest of these runes, Ansus for divine breath, the wind of thought, Raido for the journey, the soul's path. Aiwas, An for Yggdrasil itself, the axis of all life, and Algizan for protection, the guardian's grace. Each held a secret, each spoke a truth. Each tied Odin further to the destiny he had chosen, not as a tyrant or conqueror, but as a guide, a guardian of wisdom's flame. But wisdom is never still. And Odin knew that even with the runes, with all he had endured, there was more to see, more to shape. The threads of fate did not end in Asgard. They wove through all the realms, and a storm was coming. One whispered of in ancient tongues, sung of by the wolves who chased the sun and moon. Ragnarok, the end of all things. But not yet. For now Odin wandered once more, cloaked not in gold but in gray, his steps soft, his presence light. He moved through the realms like a dream, a story told in fireside hush. And as he passed, the runes stirred. The trees leaned closer. The ravens flew ahead, calling to the hidden places, and in the quiet, as you drift now towards sleep, you too may hear them. The soft sound of footsteps on the bark of time, the hush of a breath drawn between stars. Odin walks the world still. Beneath the arching branches of Yggdrasil's great roots, Odin approached the ancient well. The well of Uruk. It was no ordinary spring. Here, past and future touched fingertips. The surface shimmered with stories yet untold, and the mist that rose from its depths smelled of memory and moonlight. The Norns sat by its banks, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, weaving the fates of gods and mortals alike. In their silent vigil, time slipped like water through fingers. Odin bowed before them.
Tell me,
He asked softly.
what must be done to see beyond the veil, to peer into the deep truths that lie beneath all things?
Urd's gaze did not rise. She continued her weaving, threads of gold and shadow moving through her hands. But Verdandi spoke, her voice like wind over still water.
To know the truth, you must leave behind the eye of pride.
And Skuld, who looked only forward, added,
Only one who has surrendered something precious can see the roots of destiny.
Odin understood. He turned to the edge of the well. With solemn purpose, he plucked out his eye, the eye of foresight, of judgment, of kingship, and cast it into the depths. The well swallowed it whole. A ripple passed over the water, and the world shifted. In its place, knowledge came, not through sight, but through stillness, through silence, through the aching hush of sacrifice. From the mist rose Mimir, once a god of unmatched wisdom, now a silent head preserved by magic and memory. Mimir was the guardian of the deepest secrets. His eyes were closed, but he saw everything.
Odin,
He said without lips.
you have given much. What is it you seek?
Odin's voice was barely a whisper.
I seek to know how to hold back the darkness. I seek the runes of power. I seek what lies beneath the world, that I might protect what lives above it.
Mimir did not answer. Instead, he showed Odin a vision, the roots of Yggdrasil reaching deep into Ginnungagap, the primordial void, the storm winds of Niflheim brushing against the fires of Muspelheim, the first spark of life, the birth of gods and giants, the weaving of destinies, the shattering of peace. And far ahead, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Odin watched in stillness, He saw the fall of Asgard, the burning skies, the ship of dead souls, Naglfar, sailing from Helheim. He saw Fenrir rise, jaws wide, and Jörmungandr, the world serpent, coiling through the seas. He saw himself, spear in hand, standing before the wolf. The vision ended.
Then it is true.
Odin said, his voice filled with ancient sorrow.
The end will come.
Mimir's head bowed slowly.
All things end, even the gods. But in the ending, there is beginning. From ash, new roots take
hold. Odin sat beside the well for what felt like ages, listening to the silence. The wind through Yggdrasil's roots, the threads weaving, the water rippling. Then he rose. He was no longer just the king of Asgard. He was a wanderer who had tasted wisdom, a seeker who had paid the price. From the well he took nothing but what could not be held. Understanding. As he walked back toward the trunk of the world tree, the Norns spoke in unison.
Those who give up most gain deepest truth.
Above, the leaves of Yggdrasil whispered in the breath of eternity. And beneath, Odin's steps grew heavy with the weight of what he now knew. He did not speak of it to the gods when he returned. Not yet. For the knowledge was not yet ripe. It had to live in silence a while as seeds rest beneath the soil before bursting forth. But he changed. He walked differently. He watched more closely. He listened to the ravens more often. Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. And sometimes when the moon hung low over the branches of the world tree, he stood alone beneath its limbs and remembered the well, the Norns, and the eye he left behind. He wore a patch now, not as a wound, but as a badge. It marked him not as broken, but as brave. For the gods must suffer too if they are to lead. The wind shifted again, colder now, as Odin emerged from the well of Mimir, its visions still swirling in the back of his mind. Knowledge flowed through him like water through cracked stone, and yet he felt no peace. The thirst for understanding burned brighter still, unquenched. There was another truth, deeper, older, hidden in the threads of the cosmos. And Odin knew now that his journey was not yet complete. He turned his gaze skyward to the ash tree Yggdrasil, whose boughs touched the heavens and roots delved into shadow. This sacred tree held the balance of all realms, from Asgard above to hell below. Within its branches fluttered the great eagle that knew all the winds, and beneath its roots slithered the serpent Nidhogg, gnawing at the tendrils of creation. And it was here Odin realized that the final wisdom could be found. For 9 days and 9 nights he would hang from the tree, not by command nor by punishment, but by choice. This sacrifice, unlike the eye given to Mimir's well, would require his whole self. To find the secrets of the runes, the oldest language, the primal sound that shaped the 9 realms, he would need to die and be reborn in silence. He climbed the tree slowly, each step accompanied by a whisper of wind and a shiver of bark. The gods watched from afar, some in awe, some in sorrow. None dared to stop him, not Frigg, his beloved, whose heart trembled with grief. Not Thor, the Stormbringer, not Tyr, the one-handed god of justice. All knew this path was Odin's alone. At the tree's highest bough, where the world curved in silence and time stood still, Odin fashioned a noose of gleaming rope and stepped into the void. 9 days, 9 nights, no bread, no mead, no sound, no comfort, only the wind in the branches and the heartbeat of the tree. Suspended between worlds, Odin drifted beyond pain, beyond hunger, beyond thought. His soul unraveled and wove itself anew in the tapestry of the cosmos. And in that void, something answered. A whisper, a flicker. Symbols danced before his eyes, runes of power and shape, the language of creation. He saw Ansus, the rune of divine breath, Raido, the path of travel, Algas, the guardian's call, and so many others, each humming with meaning, each a door to another truth. The runes did not speak in words, but in knowing. They burned themselves into Odin's spirit like stars etched in the night. And with them came understanding, not just of fate, but how to bend it. Not just of war, but of peace, of love, of the silence that held all sound. On the 9th day the wind stilled, the rope snapped. Odin fell, not down but inward. And when he opened his eye, he stood beneath Yggdrasil once more. Changed, enlightened, alone. The gods came to greet him. The sky brightened as dawn crept over the roots of the world. The ravens Hugin and Munin returned to his shoulders, whispering their secrets. The wolves Geri and Freki padded to his side. And the first thing Odin did was take a branch from the tree and carve the runes into it with a blade of bone. The runes sang to him. He smiled. From this sacrifice, Odin brought back not power, but wisdom. He gave the runes to gods, and men taught their meanings to skalds and seers, and with them came poetry, magic, and the shaping of destiny. But Odin did not rest. There were still questions, still shadows on the edge of light. The threads of fate, spun by the Norns beneath the tree, showed a coming storm. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, loomed like a storm cloud on the edge of time. And so, Odin prepared. He wandered the world still, cloaked in gray, with his staff in hand and his hood drawn low. He whispered to kings, sat by campfires with poets, walked unnoticed through mortal realms. Sometimes he left gifts, a sudden thought, a flash of inspiration, a warning in a dream. He was no longer just the king of Asgard. He was the Allfather, the seeker, the watcher, the wanderer. And as he passed through forests, across mountains, over fjords and frozen plains, the land remembered his steps. His name echoed in the wind, etched in stone, passed from tongue to tongue in reverent awe. Odin was here, they said. Odin still walks. Odin watches the skies. And far above, on the highest branch of Yggdrasil, a raven took flight. Beneath the veiled skies of Yggdrasil's farthest reach, where the winds whisper only to the dead and the air carries the scent of old magic, Odin moved like a shadow swallowed in twilight. His sacrifice upon the world tree had brought him wisdom. His encounter with Mimir had granted him vision. And yet, the deep peace he sought, the final answer whispered by the fates, eluded him still. So he journeyed once more, Now Odin wandered into the shadowed lands of the Völvas, the ancient seeresses who spoke with the threads of destiny between their fingers. It was said they did not live by time, but wove it like wool, bending its strands with voice and thought. In dreams he had seen one, her eyes bound with golden thread, her voice echoing with runes too old to name. Through forests pale as ash and across rivers that ran backward, Odin walked until he reached their circle of standing stones shrouded in fog. He bowed low, for even the Allfather shows reverence where the roots of fate grow.
I have hung from the tree.
Odin whispered to them.
I have given my eye. But there is more yet. I feel it, some deeper knowing, something beyond even what I've seen.
The eldest völva turned her veiled face toward him.
You seek the voice beneath the runes. You wish to hear what the runes do not say.
Odin nodded.
Then you must give what you have not yet given. Your fear.
At this, even Odin faltered. He had given blood and time and sight. But fear he held close, hidden under his strength, his spear, his many names. Fear of endings, fear of forgetting, fear that even gods might be forgotten when time turns too far. And yet he nodded. The Völvas laid him upon the earth, not in violence, but like a child being returned to the soil. Around him they sang, voices woven with starlight and silence, each syllable a thread binding the edges of eternity. Odin's thoughts scattered like leaves. He saw not with eyes, but through moments. A great wolf pacing on the edge of dawn. A serpent coiled beneath the sea, dreaming in deep time. A girl with golden hair, crying over a field where gods would someday fall. And he wept, not with sorrow, but with the full weight of all things known. The Völvas stopped singing. Odin rose, different now, not greater, but quieter, whole. He did not thank them, for thanks are not enough. He simply bowed and turned away. He wandered again, but now his steps were lighter. In the high peaks of Vanaheim he visited the Vanir, gods of nature, peace, and quiet growth. Freyr, god of prosperity, greeted him with open arms. Freya, radiant with both love and war, offered him the wisdom of Seder, the magic of unraveling fate and reweaving it anew. It was here, among blooming fields and stars reflected in still lakes, that Odin finally rested. Not in sleep, for gods rarely slumber, but in stillness. He sat beneath a tree heavy with apples. The wind rustled its leaves like an old song. And he listened. He listened not for answers, but for the silence between them. In this silence he found what he had been chasing. Not knowledge, but understanding. Not power, but purpose. He had walked the roots of Yggdrasil, spoken to the dead, given his flesh and fear. And what remained was not a god who ruled, but a god who knew. Knew that the world turns in cycles, that even endings are beginnings in another tongue. That love and loss, war and peace, memory and myth, all of it was part of a great weaving, and all he could do was honor the thread he carried. As the winds of the 9 realms shifted once more, and twilight fell like a gentle sigh, Odin stood on a cliff overlooking all that was. Midgard shimmering below, Asgard gleaming above, the rainbow bridge catching moonlight like a song. Ravens circled him, wolves sat beside him, He held no weapon, only memory, and he smiled, saw a small thing, ancient and quiet, for he had journeyed not to conquer, but to remember, to remind even the stars that the old tales still mattered, whispered in the dark, told at the hearth, carried on the breath of those who still dream. And as he vanished into the mist, he became not a god of thunder or vengeance, but of stories. Let this story ease you into rest, where gods walk through dreams and time is but a river running soft and slow. You have followed Odin far, now let the tale carry you into the quiet between worlds. Close your eyes and drift. The journey is done, and yet it continues.